Ever feel like you're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at your hair and, well, nothing's really working? What if the answer wasn't a dozen different products, but a super targeted two-step plan from a real expert? Okay, let's dive into this.
So we're looking at a specific protocol from a trichologist, and if you're not familiar with that term, it's basically a hair and scalp scientist, a total pro. And what this expert does is cut through all the noise and boil everything down to the absolute essentials for building a real, solid foundation for healthier hair.
And get this, the entire plan is built on just that's it, two core nutrients. It's not about some crazy, complicated regimen. It's all about getting that absolute foundation right first. And here they are, iron and vitamin D3. So you're probably wondering why these two? Well, think of it like this. The expert views iron as the fundamental building block. It helps produce hemoglobin in your blood, which is kind of like the delivery truck that carries oxygen all over your body for cell growth and repair. And that absolutely includes the cells that stimulate hair growth. Then, vitamin D3 comes in as the accelerator. It plays a huge role in creating new hair follicles, the little pores where new hair can actually grow. So you've got one for repair, one for new growth. They're a real power duo. Let's see how the protocol works.
First up is setting what the trichologist calls the iron baseline. This is literally the starting point, a general recommendation for someone who hasn't had any blood work done yet.
The recommendation itself is incredibly simple. 1 iron supplement per day. That's it. But, and this is a big but, how you take it is just as important as remembering to take it at all. Now, here are the rules, and they're really specific for a reason. You have to take it with food. Super important. And just as crucially, it needs to be taken away from your morning coffee or tea. Same goes for any calcium supplements. Why? Because those things can actually block your body from absorbing the iron properly. So yeah, timing is everything. And this gets right to the core purpose. The expert says that following this simple rule is going to give you a really solid baseline. So the key here isn't about megadosing to fix a huge problem overnight. It's about creating a steady, foundational level that you can build upon. All right, so we've got our foundation set with iron. Let's move on to the second part and see how this all builds, the D3 boost. If iron is the foundation, think of vitamin D3 as what comes in to activate and support hair health on a whole other level. The recommended starting dose here is 5,000 units per day. And you guessed it, the expert has a very specific way you should take it to get the maximum effect. Now this is pretty interesting. The expert recommends a liquid version, about 5 drops, placed right under the tongue. This is for something called sublingual absorption, which is really just a fancy way of saying it gets into your bloodstream directly, bypassing the whole digestive system. It's way more efficient. And notice the complete contrast with iron. This one is taken 1 to 2 hours away from food. So how long do you follow this baseline protocol? The advice is to stick with it for 6 months. But this is where the expert's advice takes a really important turn. 6 months is the limit before you absolutely must reassess.
And that 6-month reassessment brings us to what the expert says is the most important part of this entire protocol. Because that baseline is just a starting point. The real goal is to move from general advice to your own personal data. The expert talks about hitting your optimal range. Now, this isn't just about not being deficient. We're not aiming for a C- here. We're aiming for that specific sweet spot where your body and your hair get the absolute maximum benefit. So what does that optimal range actually look like for vitamin D3? After you get your blood tested, the expert's target is a result of at least 60 nanograms per milliliter. Think of that number as the minimum threshold to even get into that sweet spot for hair health.
But the full optimal range goes all the way up to 80 nanograms per milliliter. So the goal is to land somewhere in that 60 to 80 window. And the only way you're going to know if you're there is to stop guessing. And here it is, the single most critical piece of advice from this expert. Get a blood test. After that initial 6-month period, you need data. This is how you tailor the protocol specifically to what your body actually needs. So let's put it all together into one clear action plan. What are the key takeaways from this whole expert protocol?
All right, here's the complete game plan. First, 1 iron supplement per day, always with food, and keep it separate from your coffee or tea. Second, 5,000 units of liquid vitamin D3 daily, placed under your tongue and taken away from food. You follow this baseline protocol for 6 months. And then, the most crucial step of all, get the blood work done. That's how you find your optimal levels and truly personalize your approach.
And that really leaves us with a final question to think about for ourselves. When it comes to our health, are we following a generic baseline, or are we making decisions based on our own unique biology?